No, thanks again. We appreciate it.
It's hard to drive and film at the same time.
We definitely
I was just trying to give you shots of this.
Okay, bye-bye.
Plenty of ice.
There's the bridge torn out.
Right. They're in short supply. I talked to a couple of
Coming down towards the Citadel, here's a boat in the middle of the road.
Okay. But there is relief there, so anybody
Right there in the middle of the road. There's some more.
That's possibly listening to you could go over to the old school building. Okay. And they have an emergency control center set up there?
Just thrown up on the bank.
Disaster relief team.
Unbelievable.
They have an 18-wheeler. They have about 20 volunteers there. It's like mini command post.
This is right around the Citadel, heading towards the Citadel. You can see it.
201 on a Sunday afternoon.
Ripping through here and taking everything down.
Terry, what you got?
I want to do something real quick because this is something we started about an hour ago, and it's been halfway done, and we need to see if we can get it done all the way. The Kentucky Fried Chicken here has brewed up 1,000
to go on up to Charleston. Okay, on line 3 we have Pat Gillespie, who has some information about a naval ship, I believe. Is this Pat Gillespie?
Yes, it is. I wanted to just tell you we have 3 messages.
Okay.
With the USS Halliburton. We have a work crew here from the ship, has just arrived in town. Any of the girls who have not called into their phone tree need to do that so that the men know what they need.
Okay.
They need to reach their phone trees. Now, we've discovered that the USS Carr...
Hilton Head. Touchdown!
Carnival of Friends.
Coming around the back side.
Boogies and be John and the Alligator Boogeyman, John McGowan, and all the party animals, and I call at GP Boogies, Buford Business Center, Buford, the Low Country's happening.
Dogwood Bluff Apartments. Are you out of money, Donna?
Yes, we are.
Okay. How many kids have you got?
There's 2 kids here.
You and 2
Here we
kids.
are at the Citadel. Now look at these trees, just completely
Okay. So there's 2 adult
uprooted.
women and 2 children.
Right.
And you need some food.
Yes.
Okay.
I went down there because the lady told me to come down this morning. And I went down there. They're sitting there. They got a lot of food. I seen all kinds of food there.
I really don't know if I'm going to be able to get out. Everything is blocked off here. You can see there's the marching field and
Okay.
what's left of it. I'm going to see if I can try and get out this way. This really does look like a war zone.
You understand that this is broadcasting.
Look at this tree.
Fundamental. We're trying to do the best we can with limited resources here, but we appreciate you standing by. Let's go back to the phones while we're waiting on that conference call from the Emergency Command Center.
Look at this wall here, blowing down.
You can get off the island.
Football field. Look at that. Can you see that?
You went to Walterboro and couldn't find anything?
The wall just blown down. Here's Ashley Marina, I guess. There's that bridge that got knocked out. Look at that house.
Well, we have been working since the afternoon after the storm, and we've been conveying messages and trying to...
Coming into the back of the College of Charleston, I don't know.
Anyway, if you need bread and milk, don't go to Buford.
Don't know what.
Somewhere else.
I better park. I better back up and park. I don't think I can get through here. This is the street right here down next to the dining hall. And there's the administration building. Pretty up nice. Look at that tree. Took a lot of wind to do that. You better believe it. Look at that. Look at that tree. What church is that? Great Episcopal. The front pillars or whatever is missing. Beirut or Lebanon.
Let's get an angle around
See the
that.
guardsmen up there?
That's what you need to get, King Street. It's like a tornado went down King Street. Right. Oh, look over here. You gotta go on the other side, Steve. There's no windows in this building. They'll make you move fast, too. So I come down here, I always have my ID. Don't do no falling.
What's the street here?
King Street. That's what
Okay.
King Street. You want the gold page? Ground zero? You haven't had that one, have you? Right.
That's the Omni Hotel, isn't it?
Yeah, nothing happened to that place. That's another little paper.
Subdivision. Look at that. As we're coming in, that tree just fell over on that house.
Baby supplies. I don't have a phone number on that. Yeah. Okay. Just talk.
Here we go down his street. Look at that. Trees. I don't know if you can see. They're all snapped off right there over that house.
With Karen Caldwell, and these people will understand what we're talking about here. Karen Caldwell's number is area code 803.
Look at those trees just snapped.
2757. Again, that number 572.
Tom's address is 31.
This is the crew of the
Just
James
look at
K.
that.
Polk. This coming up. This is great news. Another free muffin and bread drop from the Arnold Bread and Thomas English Muffins Department. And Joe Snow, we really love you to death for all the work you've been doing with this. They are baking up the bread and sending it down tonight, hopefully by 9 o'clock.
Look at that.
Possibly, I think this might even be by 7 o'clock.
Across the street from Tom's house. Devastated. Look at that. Man. Look at all those trees just snapped. At the back door of Tom and Marcia's house. This is the backyard. Holy cow.
My little dog fan.
Oh, man. There wasn't a dog in there, was there? God bless. Look at this.
And I'll show you the only damage to our house. Thank goodness.
There's the neighbors. That's the damage. All right. So I would say you're considerably lucky just to have that.
We're going to have to come out here maybe with some plastic and cover that because if it starts raining, it
may drip in there. Sure, the National Guard diesel truck bringing in diesel fuel for the generator here at the college. Hospital across, medical center across from Baptist, and there's Baptist. See, they've cleaned up a lot of the trees. See, roof damage, tree damage. Look at the line of trees just whacked out.
Service restoration will come with a range from 5 days to several minutes. Schools in much of eastern South Carolina are still closed because of damage from Hurricane Hugo. That includes colleges in the
See, these just snapped right here.
the Citadel.
And of course, the Citadel is faring no better than the remainder of the city. And for that, we're putting out instructions to Citadel cadets not to report back to the Citadel campus until 1 October.
Citadel officials are considering where to play their football game this Saturday with South Carolina State. One option is States Field in Orangeburg. Another option under consideration, Williams-Brice Stadium in Columbia. University of South Carolina will be at
Line of trees here.
boosted the military communications.
Complete line of trees just wiped out.
The hour's top story, South Carolinians continue to pick up the pieces from Hurricane Hugo. The death toll now stands at 17. New problems on the coast this morning, heavy thunderstorms.
The roof looks pretty damaged in that dormitory right there.
Tropical depression the next day or two. We're constantly trying to investigate it, but our concern is the rain.
See how the tornadoes or hurricanes snap trees.
Inches of rain very possible the next 48
Snap
hours.
them. about 30 feet up.
Nonetheless, climbing back up and around the, we figured below 70.
That really looks bad there.
Readings in the morning will indeed drop off at around 70.
That's a residence hall.
The high at around 80.
Come to the back of the food service.
WHTK.
Thank you very much, Alan. We will work on the gender identification problem there. The current condition of the outside, 69, Savannah.
You can see the windows are shattered
And surrounding areas.
in the dining hall.
68 right now on Hilton Head Island. Going to go to the phones. We did have a caller on line 5 holding, but looks like one of our volunteers has picked up that
There's
call.
a tree. I don't know where this came from, just thrown here.
Okay, hit line number 1, 99.
That one's totally uprooted right there.
Yes, this is Karen with Yamaha Suzuki of Charleston.
You can see the shutters
Just want to let everyone know that we have
been ripped apart up there.
Expect them at 2 o'clock.
Okay, and
Windows, you know, broken.
you're located.
We
Folly Beach. Again, this footage is unedited, and with the movement of the helicopter, Alan Sharp trying to do his best to capture specific instances. Sometimes the camera will whip and move.
Well, I think he did a great job on this because the day that he took this, I was also flying, and the weather was certainly unsettled the day after the hurricane. It was some awfully choppy air to try to film anything in. You can also see evidence of flooding in the middle of the island here, back behind the first and second rows of houses. You can see almost every structure out here has some sort of damage to it, whether it's a roof or some internal structure has been damaged, but there's widespread damage at Folly Beach.
Helicopter, the Apache helicopter, in a hovering position, allowing a close-up look of this portion of Folly Beach. This was taken around late morning yesterday, Friday.
We're going to be approaching the area here in a few seconds, Tom, that's commonly known to as the washout as we get up toward the north end of the island that goes up to the old Coast Guard station. You can see this. This is areas that have had some extensive erosion, and we're going to see that area in a few minutes called what we call the washout. And the island was almost cut off up here because of the extensive erosion. See this area here, the road is actually gone that goes up to the north end of the island. Extensively damaged in this area. And then the north end of the island is really cut off at the present time going out to the old Coast Guard station.
And we start seeing homes simply blown away from the foundations here in this section. Any idea of the level of storm surge at this point?
Well, I talked to Dr. Tim Conlon today, who I have a great deal of respect for, and as far as knowing a lot about hurricanes and the geology of the coast of South Carolina, he feels that conservative estimates, 12 to 15, 17 feet maybe. One time we thought 20, but whatever it was, it certainly got the job done as far as damage in this state, I would think.
That would place it at about what point of these structures?
Well, a lot of these structures, of course, are fairly old out at, this is, my point, this is the old Coast Guard station up in the north end. Some of these structures are quite old, and they didn't really have to conform to flood insurance regulations, so they were much lower, and therefore they would not stand up. You wouldn't expect them to stand up as some of the new structures that were highly elevated above what we call storm surge. This is a Morris Island Lighthouse, of course. It's at one time this structure, I understand, was about 300 yards.
There's Fort Sumter. We're approaching the Charleston Harbor, and that's the end of this section of the aerial tour. footage taken yesterday on Governor Campbell's tour of the coast. We'll move next to a closer look of Mount Pleasant and the Charleston Peninsula. There's Charleston's location as we move on a helicopter tour north, and we can take a look, Dr. Beam, at exactly where we'll be going. We'll be going to Mount Pleasant and then circling around to the west.
We're coming across Charleston Harbor, and the point I was making about the lighthouse, at one time I understand it was like 300 yards on the island, back on Morris Island. Now it's out in the surf quite a ways, but we're coming across the jetties here across the harbor, and we're actually going to cross over the tip, I believe, here of Sullivan's Island and go through Mount Pleasant and then come back onto the peninsula here in Charleston. I believe the helicopter does several circles here before it comes back out, and then we're eventually going to get back out on the Sullivan's Island.
Okay, we'll take a look at that right now. As we take a look, there we are over Mount Pleasant at this point, and we're moving in the helicopter heading west, and we'll be crossing just north of the Cooper River bridges in just a few moments. There's Mount Pleasant.
There was extensive damage to trees in this area. I know some trees. I have some friends who informed us that there are trees lying upon their houses now. Hopefully they didn't sustain as much damage as they could have, but you can see what the wind did to certain trees in these areas, and I know certain people are in these subdivisions are still trying to cut their way out.
Of course, this aerial view can just show us an overview. It's nothing of the level of damage and the trauma and disruption of life that's taking place in the Charleston area at this moment.
Well, I might point out also, Tom, these people don't have electricity. I think the sewer situation down there is bad, and the water situation, there's no water, so you really can't understand what a problem we have, and it will begin to mount in the Charleston area, even in Mount Pleasant out here. Utilities just aren't there, and it's really going to be hard to say when they're going to get them back because of the extensiveness of the damage.
All the trees felled in one direction, generally. Did most of that occur as the storm approached and the eye approached the coast?
Well, I would think so. Anytime at the wall of the eye, you're having winds up to 135 miles an hour, and in certain cases, I still believe that it spawns some tornadoes because of the way it moves certain houses on up the beach. At the wall of the eye, there certainly must be some tornadoes spun off from that even preceded a storm and caused problems, but that tremendous wind near the center of the storm plus the storm surge. But here, I think there's a lot of wind damage that preceded, especially where the trees are knocked down.
Okay, here's the twin spans of the Cooper River Bridge. And did these sustain damage?
Not that I could tell when I flew over them yesterday, and this tape really doesn't show evidence. I don't see any evidence and haven't heard reports of evidence to the Cooper River Bridge.
What protected Charleston?
Well, Charleston is the peninsula is set back in the harbor, and it has Barrier Islands, which took the brunt of it. And we're going to see that as we go back out to Sullivan's and Isle of Palms. But this is downtown Charleston on the peninsula.
If you are taping this and you stop it and spot check it, you can spot some landmarks as we go through. And we'll take a swing around the battery, then we'll come back up again and look at Charleston through a different angle here. But you can see, if you see the white steeple as we're approaching it, look just to the left of the white steeple. There are two square roofs. One is the courthouse, and the smaller one is the city hall. And the city hall and the courthouse sustained heavy roof damage.
And this is, now we're moving south of Broad, down toward the battery.
And trees
right, now we're out looking at the battery, and we're going to be turning the corner here, I believe, and heading up to Cooper River.
There's a satellite truck, one of the news-gathering trucks, Charleston, is attracting enormous media attention, of course, with the storm's passage and its aftermath. In just a moment, maybe you'll see a cluster of satellite trucks that are parked just to the left of the Ports Authority building.
Yeah, we come across the Shrine Club there, the Shrine building. It's a landmark that people can notice, identify.
And as you look, we'll be passing over the market area.
Of course, Tom, as a church, it's, I believe it's weathered several of these. St. Philip's has weathered several of these storms.
Okay, there's the market. You see the roof,
part of the roof gone,
blown away.
And we're sort of moving to the right here, is moving up Meeting Street.
It's a Methodist church.
Right. The old Washington Light Infantry building there, and part of the College of Charleston, and we move across Calhoun here, and this is the Federal building in our bottom of the frame there right now. We're moving on up Meeting Street, going up toward where the Interstate Highway I-26 and the crosstown merge.
It gives you an idea of the enormous task and successful task of evacuating that metropolitan area before the storm.
Well, I think it also points out the problem that of finding the services, the utilities, getting them back in place. The infrastructure for the electrical utilities is almost going to have to be rebuilt, and it's going to take some time, unfortunately.
There's the Interstate I-26, and
we're turning across the peninsula, I believe, going over toward the Ashley River.
You've just joined us. I'm Tom Fowler. I'm with Dr. Wayne Beam, Executive Director of the South Carolina Coastal Council, and we're watching unedited footage from a helicopter tour by Governor Carroll Campbell yesterday, Friday, from Hilton Head to North Myrtle Beach, survey of the damage caused by Hurricane Hugo. And you're seeing all the footage that was shot by Alan Sharp, videographer with South Carolina ETV.
We're moving now back across, coming down the Ashley River. You can see the Medical University sort of in the background, and these are marinas, the city marina. And we're moving back down the Ashley River out toward the harbor. And there, a good shot of the peninsula. A shot of the Coast Guard station there in the Ashley River.
That home is under construction there. I believe that's damaged.
Right, that's not damaged, as I understand. That was under construction.
You can see some evidence of the flooding in the street there. Water did downtown Charleston have in the streets? Are there reports of that?
I understood it was extensive. I don't know an exact figure of how many feet of water, but I know the water certainly overtopped the battery with several feet of water. I just don't know yet. But amazingly, some people rode the storm out down in this area.
How many?
I don't know how many. Every one of them must be a brave soul, I would say that, to have stayed here. We had a couple of our staff people who stayed in North Charleston, and we had contact with them up to about 11 o'clock that night, and the next day they told me that would be the last one they would weather, even in North Charleston. They were up on Montague Avenue, and they don't care to go through another one.
We're coming up King Street
some damage up in these areas, some roofs and some industries may have been damaged. But I think I'd be remiss if I didn't reiterate that if we ever have another thing like this, if there's a warning, I think people should evacuate. I don't believe people should take a chance and stay in the eye of a storm of this magnitude. You can see some damage this far up the peninsula. It's an industry that has tremendous structural damage. This is some of the wind damage. I think you can see, Tom, to compare this to some of the areas that we saw earlier down south of the Storm Inlet. The wind damage just snapped trees off as though they were toothpicks.
That's the Mark Clark Expressway construction.
And you can see the damage here. Trees just uprooted almost. Hard to get a sense of damage, I think, even water damage to these structures when you're looking straight down upon them. But I think if you had a more of a oblique angle and get on the ground, you can see there may be some flooding damage or wind damage to these structures even this far back from the shoreline itself. And clearly these areas, again, are without basic utilities. Tremendous hardship on the people in Charleston and the other parts of the low country this time.
The amount of damage to timber is something that's not been talked about as we look at we've been concentrating on damage to property and enormous amount of timber loss from the storm. Pass over the interstate one more time. And next we'll move on to the map where we'll be looking at Sullivan's Island. Then we'll move just north to the Isle of Palms after Sullivan's Island. And then we'll be going to Wild Dunes, which is on the northern tip of the Isle of Palms.
Yes, I might point some of those out on this map, Tom. We're leaving Charleston now, coming back off the peninsula, and we're coming out here back through the harbor, and we're going to take a turn here on Sullivan's Island, and you're going to see, I think, some graphic damage here, some graphic examples of damage. We're going to cross Breach Inlet and go up on the Isle of Palms. And, of course, Wild Dunes is a very popular resort area on the northern tip here. And I believe we swing around and see parts of the golf course that border on Dewee's Inlet. And this is Dewee's Island right across here. It's a private island. But I think that's the next footage we're going to see, basically those two islands.
Okay, let's take a look at the footage now. As we continue our helicopter tour, you're seeing what Governor Carroll Campbell and a party of top state officials saw yesterday morning, early afternoon. There's Sullivan's Island.
And we're zeroing in, I believe, now on the Ben Sawyer Bridge, which connects Mount Pleasant with Sullivan's Island. You can see that it's been damaged extensively, and it's going to take some work to get it back in shape to carry traffic. So basically, both Sullivan's Island and Isle of Palms actually cut off to vehicular traffic at this time, and as I understand it, as of right now, they're asking nobody to return, even property owners, to return to both Sullivan's Island and Isle of Palms.
Fortunately, this area had almost 100% evacuation before the storm hit.
We're swinging back around now and looking at the development here that we're going to see in just a second on the south side of the Ben Sawyer Bridge called Toller's Cove. There were a number of boats out there, and you can see some structural damage. And you can see this damage occurred even though it's actually behind Berry Island. Sullivan's Island's in front of it, and we're now coming up on Sullivan's Island. See see the difference here from the area we described much earlier down south of the Stonewall River. You can see the damage that this storm has caused on Sullivan's Island, and I believe in a minute here we'll see a landmark. I believe we'll see the old lighthouse.
And again, you're seeing unedited footage. This is all the footage shot in the helicopter tour. So you're seeing the camera moves, starts and stops.
Right, we're passing Fort Moultrie and coming around the harbor side and coming out to the ocean front. And in the background, in a few minutes, I believe you're going to see the old Sullivan's Island lighthouse. It's in the top of the frame now, and the distinguishing factor. This is Sand Dunes Club out there. They suffered some damage. And the lighthouse, of course. But again, extensive damage to structures near the front of the island and flooding toward the interior of the island.
What's the estimate of the storm surge at this point on Sullivan Island?
Again, I think a conservative estimate would be around 15 feet would have been the surge. Most of the people I consider to be knowledgeable about that topic seem to think a conservative estimate is around 15 feet, and it certainly could have been more than that. Again, see their houses actually no longer in existence. They've been blown off their foundation. And extensive flooding in the interior of the island, back off the beach.
You can see a new creek being cut.
Well, it's almost like a new inlet being cut into the island there because of the force of the storm. I believe that's the old bunker on Sullivan's Island you can see in the background. Of course, extensive damage even to structures that are back off the beach here. Interesting point to be made about that structure that's standing out there. We haven't done nearly enough work in this state on building codes and trying to adopt some building codes that would be wind resistant. And of course, some of these new structures you see are elevated to meet federal flood insurance standards. But it's really hard to explain why some houses on the front would survive the storm and some behind them wouldn't. And it probably has to do with the aerodynamics of the design of the structure itself. And these are some new structures on the beach that are elevated. Coming up toward the middle part of the island, and before we get into the Wild Dune section, which is at the north end.
We're still on Sullivan's, or have we moved to Isle of Palms?
I believe this is still Sullivan's. I'm sorry. We're on Sullivan's, and we haven't come up to Breach Inlet yet. We're on Sullivan's, and we'll be seeing crossing Breach Inlet here in just a minute. And you're right, Wild Dunes is certainly at the north tip of the Isle of Palms. We haven't gotten there yet.
There's a house under construction. Used to be. Is that right?
Well, it certainly is now, I would say.
They're up here.
Even damage several rows back here. It's what gives you an idea of the force of this of the storm as it entered here on Sullivan's Island. And this must have been fairly close to the eye of the storm.
Such unevenness of a home and several rows back.
Right.
Demolished, but yet something in front of it. Okay.
Right.
Well, the Windjammer Club there.
Right. Of course, now this is
now we're on the
Isle of Palms. Yeah. They threw me a curve there for a minute. We're all on the Isle of Palms, and this is the old business section down there, Windjammer, with some damage. And now we're on a condominium complex out here that at one time had a fishing pier. It's no longer there. It's been removed, and you can see some extensive damage here. And again, we have now crossed over Breach Inlet from Sullivan's Island. We all are on the Isle of Palms, and I think the thing that is really quite interesting out here is the amount of litter that you see and debris that's actually on the front beach, and I think Alan shot some of that while he was putting this film together. There's the debris. You can see it's quite extensive.
Just a point here that when we crossed the breach inlet, we didn't have a very clear shot of that. So when we had a sign saying Sullivan's Island, the very last of that, there may have been some Isle of Palms
clearly we
shot there. So we might have had a little overlap.
We did not have a good shot of breach inlet, so it threw us off a little bit as to when we crossed there and we got onto Isle of Palms. And some of those new structures, as a matter of fact, sitting out front were on Isle of Palms.
I think it is remarkable, though, in just this one pass to get all the material we have. And it was shot in news style, and again, in news style shooting, you'd edit a lot. What we're doing is showing you everything we have. Hopefully this has the visual information you want.
And I think people may find it a little more difficult to find structures because we're seeing such a small segment of the coast at one time. It's sometimes very difficult to identify structures that they might in fact be interested in, since we're not seeing a very broad panoramic view of these islands.
Still moving up Isle of Palms, and not quite at Wild Dunes yet. Getting close.
We're getting close, and in this area, for all the Citadel people, there was some extensive damage to the Citadel Beach Club in this area. I understand the outbuildings were pretty well demolished, and there was some, although the structure is still standing, there's some extensive damage to the Citadel Beach Club out here on the Isle of Palms.
There's a house pushed completely off its foundations into another house in the back. This island, two people walking on the street, but almost totally deserted. And now sealed off, no entry permitted by anyone unless authorized officials. Intensifying. It's moved north.
Well, it almost has a numbing effect on you after you see so much of this, Tom, as you and I have looked at for the last several days now. It's really hard to comprehend, and now we're up in the Wild Dunes section. Some very expensive houses, and some of them were damaged. There's one that's off the foundation.
That would appear to have good, solid supports.
Concrete, right. And this is a condominium complex with some damage to the roof. Part of the internal portion of the building exposed at this time. And flooding you can see in the rear.
This is Wild Dunes. We're still on the Isle of Palms. Wild Dunes is on the northern tip of the Isle of Palms. So we're in the Wild Dunes section.
Yeah, we're going to be approaching the Wild Dunes golf course here, and it's really quite devastating what the storm did to, especially hole 17 and hole 18. 18 took a lot of damage, but I think 17, which faced on Dewey's Inlet, had even more damage. And these are condominium complexes up in Wild Dunes as we'll be approaching Dewey's Inlet here soon. Up on, you can see the top of the frame, and in the background Dewey's Island.
watch this helicopter tour gives us just an incredible feeling of the immensity of the problem of cleanup and rebuilding. Just how many people, how much property, just massive.
Well, I think that's true, and I would think all those people who don't live in this part of the state at this point in time should certainly be sympathetic with the tremendous rebuilding effort that faces the residents and the state officials, federal officials, local officials. And I would hopefully we're going to pull together, and this is going to be a united effort.
That's part of the golf course there.
Part of the golf course. 17th hole is, where it was at one time, the 17th hole. There's not much left there now. I think we're going to see some of the tree damage now on I believe this might be out at DeWeese or Bull Island. This is the north end. The back end, I believe, of the Isle of Palms. And you saw some of the damage to the trees that the high wind velocity caused. And this is, you mentioned the timber industry up in the, certainly a tremendous amount of suffering is going to be had in the timber industry in this state, I think, in this area.
Okay, now we're again showing you everything we shot, and when they go around the island again, as they're doing in this case, you're seeing it just as the helicopter did yesterday. So they're taking you around one more time. And we're back on Sullivan's Island.
I beg to differ. We've gotten across Breach Inlet again. This is, I think, the Isle of Palms now. Isle of Palms now. Right, and this is a business district now, the old Windjammer, in the middle of Isle of Palms, and a panoramic view of the north of the island toward Wild Dunes.
That's panoramic. Alan shot the first pass very tight, and it's very hard to hold that camera in a moving helicopter very tight, very smooth for very long. And so on the second pass, it's pulling back wide, seeing a little bit wider shot. Gives us a good idea of the flooding. Moving a little more on the interior of the isle.
I think we're going to be coming up on this pass, if I'm not mistaken, Tom, on the marina on the back of Isle of Palms. And I think people will begin to realize that the strength that this storm had when it came across in this area, when we see what it did to the boats in the marina, the Wild Dunes Marina at the back of the Isle of Palms there on the Intracoastal Waterway. We'll see that in a minute here.
People who visited that may remember it as a magnificent marina. Stopped to so many boats in the traffic pattern going north and south on the Intracoastal Waterway.
You can see what it's done. The boats now are all the way across the Intracoastal Waterway. They're piled up on the other side of the Intracoastal Waterway like toys, and I talked to some people today who knew what was contained in this marina. They think it might be $50 million worth of damage in this one area, just to this marina and to the boats that you can see there now lie like toys on the eastern side of, the western side of the Intracoastal Waterway, right behind Isle of Palms. I think that is clear testimony to the strength that this storm packed when it hit the South Carolina coast.
So you can see there's the ocean, and the surge went over the top of the land. There was enough force of the water and the wind.
I think wind and storm surge in this area resulted in these boats. I've never seen anything quite like that, to be quite honest. There must be 35 to 50 boats in this heap. And we looked and we said they must not have had them tied down too well, but it took the moorage and everything and laid it over on the other side of the Intracoastal Waterway. Now we're coming back across the Intracoastal Waterway, passing across the Isle of Palms back into the Wild Dunes area.
Now we're in Wild Dunes, part of the northern tip of the Isle of Palms. Some of the newer homes there.
And part of the golf course.
middle of the Wild Dunes development. It's difficult sometimes to know where there was actually a lake there and where there's flooding.
Well, there is a lagoon system, of course, to help manage stormwater runoff in this area, but it's very hard to pick them out at this point in time because of the flooding that's occurred in the interior parts of the island.
And passing over the condominium.
Right, again,
at the end.
Dewee's Inlet here and Dewee's Island in the background.
Okay, let's recap just briefly where we are. Now, we're north of Charleston. If we can, if we can go to your map first here and just show us again where we are with the
Okay, we've actually stopped here at our north end of Isle of Palms. The next island is Dewee's Island. Just north of that is an island owned by the state of South Carolina, Capers Island, run by the Wildlife Department.
Okay. Move us around where we were. We went around.
We came off the peninsula, came across Sullivan's Island, and then we went up by the Isle of Palms, and we came back around. The marina that we saw was up in this area, and we came back around, and then the last shot you saw was across Dewee's Inlet, and saw Dewee's Island here, and then the progression goes Dewee's, Capers, and then Bull Island, and then this is the heart of the Cape Remain National Wildlife Refuge, and this is what we call Bull Bay. McClellanville is located a little higher up here.
Okay, let's take a look at the large map first. There we are. That's where we are now, moving up the coast.
Yeah.
Now, show us on your map, Dr. Beam, a little better about where we're going to go. We're going to McClellanville.
Yeah, we're leaving the north end of Isle of Palms, and I think there's going to be a fairly hurried flyover here past these islands, and we're actually going to get into Bulls Bay and this is part of the Cape Remain National Wildlife Refuge, and McClellanville is back up in here past Lighthouse Island and Cape Island, out here protected, we thought, by a lot of these barrier islands, but you're going to see some extensive damage up around McClellanville. But the tremendous wind damage that we found back here in the National Forest, the Francis Marion National Forest, back behind Bull Bay, must have been a tremendous amount of wind there.
Okay, as we take a look at the tape, there we are.
And this is some of those I think Bull Island out here, you can see the tremendous amount of wind damage on trees. Palmetto trees are barely distinguishable, actually. There's so much damage to them and to the pine trees that have been out here on this island.
And in this whole area, north of the Wild Dunes and south of McClellanville, sparsely populated.
Right, this island is run by the Fish and Wildlife Service, the Department of Interior, the Wildlife Refuge. Now, I believe we're seeing some areas on the other side of the waterway, and just seeing some of the damage. And this is the area I think that's most clearly evident where wind damage was so terrific in this area. You can see what it's done to trees. Snapped them off like toothpicks in this area. And as I said earlier, there must be some extensive damage in the National Forest, which is fronts the Intracoastal Waterway here behind Cape Remain National Wildlife Refuge.
Are we entering the McClellanville area yet?
We're getting close into that area. I think you're going to see it. I saw numerous foundations of houses in some of these areas back here and I believe this is one we're coming up on now in the shot. It shows where a house was located one time, and this is even back behind the marsh, behind the Cape Remain National Wildlife Refuge. Now we're moving into McClellanville, and you can see what it did to some of the boats here at McClellanville. This is the Intracoastal Waterway, McClellanville, and we're actually going up, we're going to find, this is Jeremy Creek. You can see the extensive damage to some of the seafood processing areas here in McClellanville. And Tom, I think you might mention some of the flooding that is quite evident here in this area.
We'll see in just a moment a school that was an evacuation area where the people of McClellanville gathered, many people gathered, set far back from the ocean, from the water, assumed safe. And in just a moment you'll see it. It was completely surrounded by water. And Alan Sharp talked to one of the people there at the school. The governor's helicopter landed at the school yesterday, and when he saw the people waving there, surrounded by water, just to reassure them of the support of the state and trying to find out what could be done to help them. In just a moment, you'll see that, and that they had waves against the side of the school, according to one person who was there at the school. You can see the boats up. We're going to go back across before we see the school. Some of the fishing fleet there in McClellanville. See what it's done to some boats. Some of them are. This is an area that some of them might put them in dry dock, but you can see what some of the storm damage has done. If it pushed the boat that high, the surge was at about what point here? Any idea? Well, it's really hard to say, but yeah. But it really amazes some of us that we did get this kind of water this far back up into Bulls Bay, and I think that that indicates that the eye of the storms certainly was south of here, and that wall of water was pushed north and east of the eye when it made landfall around Charleston. So as you'll see when we approach this school, there's some very fortunate people with a wall of water that was so close to this school, pushing those fishing boats up on the land like that. There's the school evacuation area. And you'll see when we move around with the helicopter, the power of the water when it rearranges the cars parked in the parking lot into one jumbled mass of metal. That was an evacuation area, and you can see the water that's remaining after the storm. There were waves against the side of this during the storm. There you see the cars. You can see the power of that water pushing and rearranging thousands of pounds, tons of metal. Okay, at this point, we'll move in just a moment. McClellanville set back from the ocean. I think this shows a good example of this storm didn't just pick out people on the Barry Islands. There are people who are certainly suffering from the consequences of this storm who are not people who have just second homes on Barry Islands, but they're people moderate income who are certainly suffering because of the hurricane that hit this state. And they came back over the school. The helicopter yesterday landed at the school, and they met with people from the McClellanville community. Many people poor, low income in this area. Not heavily populated, rural, and dependent on the sea for their livelihood in many cases. And I think we ought to point out that the storm wreaked havoc, not just here on the coast, but on towards Sumter, on up towards Charlotte, and the whole path. There are people who are suffering from the consequences of this storm, not just the people who live on Barry Islands. Absolutely. What we're doing is simply showing you the helicopter tour of the coast, and this storm and its destruction and its impact on lives reaches far beyond the coast into the interior of South Carolina and on beyond. In a very relatively remote rural area near McClellanville. Go to our next map to give us an idea. We're going to have, this will be the final part of our helicopter tour of the coast. We'll go from Pawleys Island, we'll go north to Litchfield and Garden City, then Surfside Beach, then Myrtle Beach, and on to North Myrtle Beach. Let's take a look at your map.
Okay, Tom, what we've actually done is we're going to move now. We're making a big jump here from McClellanville in this area, going across, we're jumping all the way across the North and South Santee Rivers, across Winyaw Bay, and we're actually going to end up on what we call the Waccamaw Neck, which is just north of Joycetown. And the first footage, I believe, is going to be Devereux Colony, which is here, and this map is of such gross scale, you're not going to see little islands out here, but Devereux, and then we're going to Pawleys Island, and into Litchfield, and then from that we're going to cross over and to Murrells Inlet, and Huntington Beach State Park, of course, is right there. We cross the Murrells Inlet jetties, and we go to Garden City, and of course the tip down there is where the jetties are. We move up Garden City, and then from there we bleed into Surfside Beach, and then from Surfside Beach into what I call South Myrtle, and then Myrtle Beach, and then Briarcliff Acres, and then on up into North Myrtle Beach.
Okay, let's take a look at that, and we'll start off. Just north of Georgetown,
This is Devereux. And a lot of this was behind the seawall, and you guys would understand that just tremendous surge here damaged these houses. Some of these houses, I think, cost the construction alone between $500,000 to $1 million. And you can see what the surge did here. It destroyed some of these houses. You see pretty extensive flooding in the interior of Devereux here. You can see the tremendous scarps where they cut away dunes. These were giant dunes in front, and they've been scarped extensively by the storm.
Scarped, what is that?
Well, they've been eroded away, and we call it the scarp, where the face of that dune now is exposed. Now we're crossing, this is one of the most amazing areas, I think. We're crossing Midway Inlet, and this is the south end of Pawleys Island. I think this is one of the greatest landmarks in the state of South Carolina. And you can see that the storm actually cut a new inlet here. You're going to see that in just a second, and they capped it off by putting a house in the middle of it.
There's the inlet.
There are houses here that were here that are now back in the creek, and some of them have actually been blown back to the mainland behind Pawleys Island. We're coming up toward the middle of the island, and in this area south of the South Causeway, there's still extensive damage. You can see houses that have been propelled back into second and third row. The island seem to have fared better than those certainly down on the south end. Still looking at damage at Pawleys. There were some nice dunes in this area. They've certainly been cut away by the storm surge, and there's damage pretty much throughout Pawleys. This is another one of the causeways that come onto the island.
How long will it take to rebuild a dune system?
Well, a lot of this sand we feel is just offshore, and I could see even yesterday some of that sand is coming back on shore, but you know, it's not, we're moving into a time of year where we're usually into erosional pattern rather than an accretional pattern. Accretion starts during the spring and summer. So we're entering this period in certainly a tremendous net deficit.
Is there danger for further damage from the tides?
Sure. And I would like to say that we are considering an emergency order that we hope to be issuing in the next day or so. That's going to allow people to push sand or bring sand in from, as long as it's compatible sand from external sources, or push sand from the mean low water up toward their houses to get some protection. And of course, we already at this time have an emergency order in place that would allow people to use sandbags to help protect structures. But the beach face has been lowered dramatically by this storm. This is the Pawleys Island Pier Village, and you can see there's no longer a pier here. It's been destroyed. We're moving toward the north end of Pawleys now, and still damage here in this area.
If you you've just joined us, we're looking at unedited footage taken yesterday aboard Apache helicopter of the South Carolina National Guard with Governor Carroll Campbell, other top state officials, Alan Sharp from ETV, shooting the pictures. And you're seeing them as they were shot, going from Hilton Head to North Myrtle Beach.
Now we crossed the inlet. We're up here now on a beach called Magnolia Beach, which is the southern part of Litchfield. And now we're into some of the development at Litchfield. Still some damage in these areas, but a landmark on this part of the beach, I think, would be the old Litchfield Inn, and it suffered a good bit of damage, and we'll be coming up on that here in just a little bit. This is the Litchfield Inn here, and you can see there's some damage to some of the cabanas on each side here. There's one there that has some damage. I believe this area is more properly called, our term Litchfield by the Sea in this area, part of the Litchfield development. And again, they had some very nice dunes in this area, and they've certainly been...
you can see the white sand being...
Right, been dramatically reduced as a clubhouse, and it's been undermined, it seems, by... And this was a big dune at this point, and it's certainly been cut away. This area is probably better termed North Litchfield we're getting into now here.